Alright, so in just a few days we'll be dropping off the Mustang here at my local performance shop to have the engine taken out and rebuilt with stronger components. These new parts are going to allow the engine to withstand making upwards of 1,000 horsepower without tearing itself apart. And when it comes to building an engine, there's just a lot of options to consider. From the compression ratio to what type of steel the rotating assembly is made out of, H versus I-beam rods, whether or not you should use the stock block, your fuel system, and since the engine's out, it also makes sense to have a number of other upgrades and maintenance done at the same time. So in this video, I'm going to go over all the parts that are about to be installed in the Mustang, why I chose those parts, and what kind of power we can expect with this particular setup. So every build should have a clear goal. Whether that's building a naturally aspirated track car, or stuffing the biggest supercharger you can fit under your hood, or even if it's just having the sickest looking ride at the next car meet. Whatever it is, your goal should be dictating what parts you buy. My goal is to build a 750 wheel horsepower twin turbo daily driver that's still very streetable, meaning the AC and power steering still work, the car doesn't buck and chop at low RPMs, and it can run on 91 octane. I'd also like the option to easily turn up the boost to where the Mustang can put down upwards of 900 wheel horsepower with a higher octane fuel. So keep these parameters in mind as I go over the composition of my build, and just realize that what makes sense for me maybe doesn't make sense for you, since we probably have different goals. Now, since I'm planning on going well beyond the stock power limit of a 3-valve Mustang, which is 500-ish something depending on how much torque the motor is making, I definitely need to replace my internals. And for those that don't know, internals, aka rotating assembly, just means the crankshaft, connecting rods, pistons, bolts, bearings, and so on. Now, there are a few key things to consider when upgrading an engine's rotating assembly: the compression ratio, displacement, I versus H-beam connecting rods, how the internals are made, and what type of material they're made of. Let's start things off with compression ratio. An engine's compression ratio is determined by comparing the available volume in a cylinder at two different points in the engine cycle: when the piston's all the way at the bottom of its stroke and when it's all the way at the top. The difference in those two volumes is what's called the static compression ratio. So if someone says their engine has a compression ratio of 10:1, that just means there's 10 times more volume in the cylinder when the piston's at bottom dead center compared to when it's at top dead center. Now, the higher an engine's compression ratio, the better it is at converting thermal energy from combustion into mechanical energy. Another way of saying that is less energy is lost to heat. The engine is technically more thermally efficient. And if you compare two engines that are exactly the same, except one is a higher compression ratio, and you give them exactly the same amount of fuel, the engine with higher compression will make more power. So high compression is good. But engines with high compression require a higher octane fuel to prevent detonation. And this is where things start to get pretty nuanced, and I don't want to spend half of the video talking about compression ratios. So in general, if you plan on sticking with a naturally aspirated build, you want as high of a compression as you can get. I'm talking like 14 or 15:1 if the parts are available. You'll only be able to feed an engine like that E85 or race fuel, but it'll be one badass all-motor build. But if you plan on boosting your build at some point, you're going to want to keep the compression ratio fairly mild, especially if you don't plan on running E85. As a starting point, keep the compression at 11:1 or under. And if you plan on going with a lot of boost, say north of 15 or 20 pounds, you should probably keep it under 10:1. But those are just very general guidelines, and there's a lot of factors to consider, so you're just going to have to put in the research. Anyway, since I'm planning on only running about 12 to 15 pounds of boost most of the time, I did slightly bump up my compression ratio to 10.2 over the stock 9.8. Now let's talk about displacement. We've all heard the old adage, there's no replacement for displacement. And if you've seen Calvo Motorsports Vipers gapping everything they race by a couple bus lengths, 1, 2, 3. You'll know this still rings true today. So for me, this is a no-brainer. If you're rebuilding your engine and have the opportunity to increase its displacement, whether by a longer stroke or oversized pistons, go for it. I went with MMR's 5.0 stroker kit that increases the engine stroke to 3.8 inches versus the stock 3.5, which bumps up my engine's displacement to just under 5 liters or about 300 cubic inches. One thing I didn't do that I now regret is get oversized pistons. I figured that would complicate the build and require sending the block off to a machine shop, but later learned it's just not that big of a deal. Most shops have a honing tool that makes increasing the diameter of a cylinder pretty straightforward. So I left a little displacement on the table with that mistake, but live and learn. Let's move on to the connecting rods. The stock I-beam rods are the weakest part of the Ford modular engine. They can withstand a 3-valve Mustang making about 450 rear wheel torque, and that's pushing it. So in my case, they definitely need to be replaced. And you'll notice when you go shopping for new rods, there's two major options, I and H beams. The letters correspond to the shape of the rods, but I like to think of it as H beams having material removed from the sides and I beams having voids on the top and bottom. So which one's better? Well, there's a common belief that I-beam rods are generally lighter and thus better for high revving applications, and H-beams are stronger and better suited for boosted applications or engines that make a lot of torque in the lower RPMs. But that's just not the case anymore. Connecting rod technology has come a long way, and both types of rods can be made to support high torque and high revving applications. Now, an I-beam that can withstand the same forces of an H-beam will typically be a few grams lighter but cost 2 to 3 times as much as an H-beam. So in my particular case, saving 56 grams wasn't quite worth $700, and I went with the H-beams. Now, how the connecting rods are made and what type of material they're made of affects how much power they can handle. And this is true for the crankshaft and pistons as well. So most OEM or stock connecting rods are made by sintering metal powder, which is like compacting a bunch of metal dust to form a shape with pressure and heat. And this process results in poor grain structure and mediocre yield strength. And there's two common ways manufacturers go about making stronger parts. One is forging, where the steel is heated up and pressed into the desired shape. Another is cutting parts out of solid blocks of steel, also known as billet. Another factor you have to consider is what type of material these parts are made of. The most popular options are steel, aluminum, and titanium, but there are multiple alloys to consider for each of these materials. For example, 4140, 4340, and 5140 are all types of steel that have different yield and tensile strengths. Now, instead of talking about the composition of different alloys and why aluminum rods are a poor choice for street cars, I'm just going to cut to the chase. You want your crankshaft and rods to be made out of forged 4340 steel and your pistons to be made out of a forged aluminum alloy like 2618 or 4032. Forged rotating assemblies made with these alloys are super strong and can reliably handle over 1,000 horsepower. The MMR 5.0 stroker kit I chose meets these requirements and includes all the bearings, piston rings, and bolts, which makes it a complete and convenient package for my build. So we've talked a lot about the parts that go inside the engine, but what about the block? Well, I wasn't able to find any definitive information on the power limit of the stock 4.6 aluminum block, but I did find a couple videos of people pushing over 1,000 horsepower with them. So I think the stock block will do just fine for my build. Now, to help the engine breathe, I also ordered a pair of Stage 3 CNC ported heads from Livernois that increase airflow by about 25% over stock. They also include stiffer springs, larger stainless steel valves, and small details like chamfered edges and really pretty polished decks. Now, ported heads are expensive and definitely not necessary when trying to make a lot of horsepower with boost, but I want my engine to make as much power as it reasonably can before the turbos are installed. This will allow the engine to make comparable power with less boost, which means less stress and wear and tear on the engine over the long term. So for example, if I can get the Mustang to put down 420 wheel horsepower while it's naturally aspirated, in theory, I should only have to run about 12 pounds of boost to get to 750 wheel and about 17 pounds of boost to put down 900. I also did a whole video that compares the cylinder heads before and after porting, goes over Livernois' CNC process, and what kind of power gains they should deliver. So for the curious, there's a link in the description below. Alright, if you didn't already know, big horsepower requires a lot of fuel. And since 3-valve Mustangs can only handle about, 420-ish wheel horsepower on the stock injectors and fuel pump, my build is definitely going to need an all-new fuel system. But how do you go about determining which fuel pump and fuel injectors you need? Well, for the injectors, all you have to know is your desired horsepower, whether or not you'll be using a power adder, and what type of fuel you'll be running. Then you input those values into a calculator and it'll tell you what you need. In my case, since I want to be able to make around 900 wheel horsepower in pump gas, we can see that I roughly need 1000 cc or 90 pound injectors. I cross-referenced this with a chart on LMR and the recommendation was consistent, so I went with a set of 1000 cc or 95 pound injectors from Deechworks. Now selecting a fuel pump basically follows that same process, but it was a little difficult for me to find a clear answer. I found a chart on Summit Racing's website that says a 470 liter per hour fuel pump is good for around 800 horsepower with a power adder. And I also found a 525 LPH pump from Walbro that says it's good for 900 plus on naturally aspirated applications. So extrapolating out from those two data points, I figure I need to be well into the 600s to be safe. Now since upgrading a fuel system also often means larger fuel lines and running a return style setup, I decided to buy a complete fuel system kit from On3 that includes dual 320 liter per hour fuel pumps, a billet triple pump fuel hat, a 1-to-1 pressure regulator, larger fuel lines, all the necessary fittings, and a big fancy fuel filter. On3 states this kit's good for 1000 horsepower, and given their experience building turbo kits for Camaros, Mustangs, and even a Hayabusa, I feel pretty confident this system is going to get the job done. Now since the engine had to come out for all this to be done, I'm also having a few miscellaneous upgrades and maintenance done at the same time. MMR's Hurricane oil pump with billet gears that has a lifetime warranty, a fresh timing kit with new lash adjusters and followers from Ford Performance, all new gaskets for the front cover, cylinder heads, oil pan, and valve covers, and new VCT solenoids and motor mounts. One last upgrade I'm having done is moving the battery to the trunk, and I'm doing that for two good reasons. According to some back of the envelope math I've done, moving about 45 pounds from the engine bay to the trunk actually shifts the weight distribution by about 1%, which I think brings the Mustang to a 52 to 48 split in its current form. And the second reason is the turbo kit I'm leaning towards requires moving the battery anyway, so it just made sense all around. So what kind of power can we expect naturally aspirated from the Mustang from the larger displacement, higher compression, and ported heads? Well, there's a solid chance it'll be above 400 wheel horsepower, but I'm really hoping to hit 420, as that would make this 3-valve engine as powerful as a brand new Gen 3 Coyote. And of course, anything above that will exceed my expectations and I'll just be super stoked. Now, if you've made it this far, you'll probably notice we haven't really talked about boost. You know, how exactly is the Mustang going to make upwards of 1000 horsepower? And what transmission are you going to upgrade to once the stock one gives out? Well, those are both good questions, and I have some candidates in mind, but the truth is I'm still researching various boost and transmission options, so we'll go over those in a follow-up video. And if any of you know anybody who can help me build a symmetrical twin-turbo setup that uses electronic wastegates, please point them my direction. Otherwise, I hope to see you in the next one. Peace!